The first thing you need to understand is that manipulators don't look dangerous. They don't announce themselves. They don't raise their voice or reveal their intent. Most of the time they sound calm, reasonable, even kind. And that's what makes them so powerful. Somewhere in history, a man understood this better than anyone else. Not a warrior with a sword, but a thinker with a pen. Niccolo Machiavelli lived in a world where trust could get you killed and honesty could cost you everything. And instead of pretending humans were noble, he chose to study them as they actually were: fearful, predictable, hungry for control. What he uncovered wasn't evil. It was uncomfortable truth. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting across from someone who smiles at the right moments, agrees just enough, and somehow always leaves you feeling uncertain about yourself. You can't explain why, but after every conversation, you replay your words in your head, wondering if you said too much, or not enough, or the wrong thing entirely. That confusion isn't accidental. It's engineered. Manipulators don't dominate you with force. They dissolve your certainty slowly, the way water erodes stone. And the most dangerous part is that they rarely feel like enemies. They feel familiar. Sometimes they feel like allies. Machiavelli noticed something most people miss. Power doesn't come from overpowering others. It comes from understanding how their minds move under pressure. When fear enters the room, logic leaves. When admiration appears, defenses drop. When uncertainty lingers, people search for someone to follow. This is where manipulation lives. Not in aggression, but in psychology. And once you understand the patterns, you stop being a target. One of the first truths Machiavelli observed was that people crave certainty more than freedom. When the world feels unstable, they will cling to anyone who sounds confident, even if that confidence is empty. Manipulators exploit this by never appearing unsure. They speak slowly. They pause before answering. They let silence do the heavy lifting. And while you're filling the gap with doubt, they're filling the space with authority. The trick isn't that they know more than you. It's that they never let you see them hesitate. And the moment you realize this, something shifts. You stop mistaking confidence for competence. You start listening for substance instead of tone. There's a strange moment that happens when you stop reacting emotionally to a manipulator. They feel it immediately. Their words lose traction. Their presence loses gravity. Because manipulators rely on one thing above all else: your reaction. They need you to flinch, to explain yourself, to defend your intentions. Machiavelli understood that the person who controls their emotions controls the interaction, not by suppressing feeling, but by refusing to reveal it. Silence, when used intentionally, becomes a mirror. It forces the other person to confront their own tactics. Another insight Machiavelli captured was that people reveal more when they feel safe than when they feel threatened. Manipulators create artificial safety. They agree with you just enough to make you talk. They validate your frustration before steering it. They make you feel seen so they can later decide how you'll be directed. But here's the reversal. When you understand this, you stop oversharing. You stop filling space with personal details. You let the other person talk instead. And as they do, they expose their values, their fears, and their strategies without realizing it. Information is power, and the person who speaks less often holds more of it. There's a reason manipulators subtly change their personality depending on who they're with. Machiavelli saw that people trust reflections of themselves. We feel comfortable around those who seem to share our worldview, our humor, our frustrations. This is not coincidence. It's mimicry. And once you recognize it, you stop being hypnotized by familiarity. You ask yourself a simple question: are they being authentic or adaptive? Because authenticity is consistent, but manipulation is flexible. The moment someone becomes whoever they need to be to win you over, you're no longer in a conversation. You're in a strategy. What Machiavelli truly mastered was the idea of appearing harmless. The most effective manipulators never look like threats. They let others underestimate them. They allow people to feel superior. They step back just enough to stay invisible. And while attention is focused elsewhere, They shape outcomes quietly. This is where many people fail. They try to confront manipulation directly, thinking exposure equals victory. But Machiavelli knew that confrontation often strengthens the manipulator because it gives them drama, chaos, and emotional leverage. Outsmarting them means denying them the stage entirely. There's a subtle psychological shift that happens when you stop trying to prove yourself. Manipulators often provoke you into explaining your worth, your intentions, your decisions. Once you're explaining, you're already losing, because explanation implies you need approval. Machiavelli believed power lies in self-definition, not justification. The moment you become comfortable letting others misunderstand you, manipulation loses its grip. Not everyone deserves clarity. Not everyone gets access to your inner world. One of the most uncomfortable truths Machiavelli left us with is that people are more loyal to their fears than to their morals. Manipulators exploit this by framing choices in terms of loss. What you might lose, who you might disappoint, what could go wrong if you don't comply. Fear narrows vision. It shortens time. It makes immediate relief feel more important than long-term freedom. The counter to this isn't bravery in the cinematic sense. It's patience. It's stepping back emotionally and asking what this situation looks like 6 months from now, not 6 minutes. Manipulators thrive in urgency. They collapse timelines so you can't think clearly. Slow thinking is rebellion. There's a moment when you begin to see manipulation not as something personal, but as something mechanical. Patterns repeat. Tactics recycle. The same emotional buttons get pressed again and again. And once you see the machine, you stop blaming yourself. You realize you weren't weak. You were human. Machiavelli never judged human nature. He studied it. And in doing so, he gave us the ability to step outside the game without pretending it doesn't exist. The most powerful shift happens when you stop trying to win against manipulators and start becoming unreadable to them. Predictability is their weapon. They learn your reactions, your triggers, your desires. They map you, but when your responses become calm, measured, and slightly detached, their map stops working. You don't need to be cold. You don't need to be cruel. You just need to be centered. Emotional stability is the one thing manipulation cannot penetrate. At the end of all this, Machiavelli's greatest lesson isn't about deception. It's about awareness. The moment you understand how power actually works in human relationships, you stop being naive, but you don't become bitter. You become grounded. You stop assuming everyone is good, but you also stop assuming everyone is evil. You see people as complex, driven by fear, desire, and survival. And in that clarity, you gain something rare: freedom. Because manipulators can only control those who don't see the strings. And once you do, the performance ends. When the performance ends, something strange happens inside you. Not relief exactly, and not anger either, but a quiet recalibration. It's the moment you realize how much energy you used to spend trying to be understood by people who never intended to understand you in the first place. Machiavelli would have recognized this moment instantly. He knew that the most exhausting prison isn't made of walls, but of expectations. Expectations manipulators carefully build inside you, brick by brick, until you start managing their emotions instead of your own life. There is a subtle grief that comes with awakening to manipulation. You look back at conversations, relationships, entire phases of your life, and you see them differently now. Words that once sounded supportive reveal hidden conditions. Compliments that once felt warm now feel transactional. And for a moment it hurts, because you realize you weren't engaging with people as they were, but as you hoped they would be. Machiavelli never promised comfort. He promised clarity. And clarity often arrives like cold air on bare skin. One of the most dangerous illusions manipulators create is the illusion of moral superiority. They frame themselves as the reasonable one, the patient one, the mature one. And if you resist them, you're suddenly selfish, dramatic, or ungrateful. This tactic is devastating because it attacks your identity, not your argument. Machiavelli understood that controlling the narrative is more powerful than controlling the outcome. Whoever defines what is right rarely needs to force compliance. People will police themselves. The escape from this isn't proving your goodness. It's realizing you don't need to be cast as the hero in someone else's story. There comes a point where you stop reacting to emotional bait, where accusations don't ignite panic anymore, where silence no longer feels like rejection. And this is where manipulators become desperate. They escalate. They provoke harder. They may even play the victim. Machiavelli observed this pattern centuries ago. When influence weakens, manipulators switch masks. Power slipping away feels like death to them. And this is why consistency is crucial. Not aggression, not explanation, consistency. You don't argue with the storm. You become the mountain. Another truth Machiavelli hinted at, though few like to admit it, is that manipulators often succeed because they study human nature, while others deny it. They don't believe people are honest. They believe people are predictable, and unfortunately they're often right. We repeat patterns. We seek approval. We fear isolation. But awareness breaks predictability. The moment you stop responding the way you always have, the manipulator loses their advantage. It's like changing the rules mid-game. They're still playing chess while you've walked off the board. You begin to notice how power shifts when you stop volunteering information, when you stop justifying boundaries, when you let no exist without decoration. This is deeply uncomfortable at first, because most of us were conditioned to earn peace rather than assert it. Manipulators exploit that conditioning expertly. Machiavelli would say that the person who needs permission is already subordinate, and the person who grants it knows it. Freedom begins when you no longer ask for approval to exist as you are. There's an eerie calm that follows this transformation. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You listen more, but you don't absorb everything. You stop trying to correct how others see you. And in doing so, you regain control over how you see yourself. This is the reversal manipulators never expect. They assume you'll either fight or submit. They rarely anticipate withdrawal. Quiet detachment starves manipulation faster than confrontation ever could. Over time, you start recognizing manipulation not just in others, but in systems, workplaces, media, even culture itself. Machiavelli wasn't writing only about rulers and courts. He was writing about influence in all its forms. The same psychological levers repeat everywhere: fear, urgency, identity, belonging. Once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them, and you begin to move through the world with a sharper awareness, not cynical but awake. The final and perhaps most unsettling realization is this: manipulators don't have more power than you. They have more permission. Permission you unknowingly gave them to define the rules, set the tone, and shape the emotional environment. Taking that permission back doesn't require revenge or exposure. It requires self-trust, the kind of trust that doesn't need validation, the kind that remains steady even when misunderstood. Machiavelli is often remembered as ruthless, but that's a shallow reading. What he really understood was survival, how people protect themselves when the world is uncertain, how power fills the vacuum left by confusion, and how clarity is the rarest form of strength. Outsmarting a manipulator isn't about becoming darker. It's about becoming clearer, so clear that their shadows no longer reach you. And once you reach that clarity, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling hunted. You stop feeling small. You stop feeling like you need to outthink everyone in the room. You simply exist, grounded and alert, no longer playing games you never agreed to play. And in that stillness, manipulation has nothing to hold on to.